Okay, next up is Madden Advertising Agency. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taylor Guessman. I'm Destination Strategy Director with Madden Media, and we'll introduce the team here in a moment, but we did want to say a couple things about ourselves. On behalf of all 170 of us at Madden Media, we're very grateful to be here and thankful for this opportunity. And we feel that we bring a really good balance of a local and regional understanding of Eureka Springs and its needs. We've got some local presence here with some very close locals, and then some partnerships that we have locally with Bentonville, Branson, and some other partners in Arkansas. We've had a presence in Arkansas since 1993. But with that, we also bring some national scale. We work exclusively in tourism and bring with that a lot of tourism intelligence. So we're excited to share our case studies with you today, but we wanted to kick over some intros. So we'll kick it over to Ms. Kaylee to introduce herself.
Hi. There we go. Hello, my name is Kaylee, and I'm actually your neighbor. So I am over in Berryville, just a hop, skip, jumping away. I'm very fortunate to get to visit Eureka Springs on a weekly basis, eat my way through town, which is my favorite thing to do. If we were to become your partner, I'd be kind of your go-to gal alongside Taylor, so you'll hear a lot from me. But super grateful to be here today. Thanks so much for having us.
Hey, nice to meet everybody. My name is Jake Sullivan, Senior Director of Destination Strategy with Madden Media. Been with Madden almost 4 years. I started my Madden career March of 2020, so you can imagine kind of what that tumultuous time was with the pandemic just starting. But prior to working for Madden, or prior to joining Madden, I was a Madden client. So I've spent 8 years kind of on your side of the fence. I spent about 4 of those with Visit Frisco, and then the remainder of that with Visit Fort Worth. So I'm based in Dallas, quick flight up here. It's twofold because not only have I been able to see really the transition of Madden over the last probably 10 years from being client, now working here, really seeing our evolution from being really known for visitor guides and travel inserts to really now a full-service destination marketing agency that really is kind of a one-stop shop. But you know, really happy to be here. I will be kind of a senior lead with Taylor and Kaylee, so make sure that you know, all of our marketing efforts are getting across the finish line, and we're being efficient with our dollars and making sure that we're fiscally responsible with the dollars that you put us in charge of.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Dialessi. I am a Senior Vice President here at Madden, and I have the pleasure of managing our West Coast division. So welcome officially to Team Sasquatch, which is our West Coast and Midwest clients. And really in my role across the agency, I get to work really closely with Jake as our destination strategy directors and the account team on overall client strategy. So I think what you're gonna hear today is not only what we can bring to the table from a marketing strategy perspective, but also visitation management and destination management as well, because we know that that's something that has to be top of mind for you all. So prior to joining Madden 5 years ago, I worked for a state tourism office for 10 years, but I also have a master's degree in sustainable destination development, which really focuses more on the economic viability of tourism industries and helping tourism management in destination as well. So we're excited to be able to talk to you about that.
And good afternoon, y'all. My name is Matt Clement, proud Arkansan. I grew up on the backside of Oaklawn Park, helping my dad vet horses down in Hot Springs. Graduated from Henderson State. Started my tourism career here in Arkansas, first at Oaklawn and then moving on to Experience Fayetteville. So certainly bringing a lot of personal knowledge, working knowledge, and otherwise of Northwest Arkansas. Certainly have frequented Eureka Springs many times over the years, and it's a joy to be back here, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity. Here at Madden, my role is generally helping with our clients to build their strategic marketing campaigns, or rather plans, which then go into the campaigns, helping also manage our intelligence resources. Really excited to show you what we're able to do there because it does set us apart from our competition. But I work with clients all across the country, helping them with those strategic plans and then connecting those to the actions that we take as an agency partner, right down to measurement, and then finally to communication, not only to the board leadership, but also to the community at large, your residents, your stakeholders, business owners. So it's a real pleasure to be back home here in Arkansas. and I get to keep going right on here. So I hope I got started on a good foot here. So one of the things that separates Madden in our DNA and how we think, and we're going to say this a couple of times, is that whether it's the work that Kristen has done in Wyoming or Jake in Fort Worth. Jake and I actually worked together at Visit Fort Worth, which is where I headed after my tour of duty in Fayetteville. But one of the things that separates us is that we have been in those chairs, and we understand one of the things that many of our agency competitors don't always get exactly right is that they don't understand the connection between the actions that they're taking and key business outcomes. A lot of times, and certainly it was true for me working on the DMO side, is that a lot of folks that I worked with would talk about key performance indicators or marketing indicators and not key business outcomes. Ultimately, we understand that it's not going to be just how many people were driving to the website or how many people clicked on ads or how many people are following the social media accounts. It's going to be dollars and cents. One of my mentors, actually our mentor from our CEO in Visit Fort Worth, when Jake and I worked there together, said, Matt, we operate without a cash register, but all of our board members and all of our stakeholders have them. So we have to operate as we do too. We have to be able to operate that in that way and communicate that way. So at Madden, we have been a leader in the industry in building and speaking about this across the country about a different way of operating from top down. And we like to think of it as this big pyramid. And at the very top of the pyramid, you see mission statement. But this isn't the mission statement that is on the wall somewhere collecting dust that maybe was ratified 15 or 20 years ago. We think about this as a living, breathing purpose. What is it that you want to accomplish as a destination? Now, one of the things that Eureka Springs has, and it's really a luxury compared to a lot of destinations, is that you can go a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways that this destination can grow and prosper, and you have a lot of different roads. And we want to work with you, and that's going to be one of the very first, if not the first thing that we would do as your partner, is to have that discussion with you, with local stakeholders, local residents, about what is it that you want us to help you do? What is it that you want to accomplish? That's your mission statement. Now, between that, which is not just a pie-in-the-sky vision, but an actual thing that we want to work with you towards, between that and all of the work that we actually do, doing campaigns, getting people to go to the website, getting them to sign up for email newsletters, to go to the social media channels. Between that and the mission statement is really what defines Madden and how we work with our partners, and that is key business objectives. This is where the rubber really meets the road. So when we talk to you about what we want to accomplish, we're going to think about how those key business objectives connect to the mission statement. So if you say, Madden team, we want you to help us increase the return on investment of all of these events that we're bringing into town. Things like the zombie crawl, which I personally really, really hate to miss this weekend. But we want you to help us increase it. We're spending money on that. We're spending money on Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. We need you to help us increase the return on investment. A key business objective might be, well, we know that if we get more people here from Dallas, Fort Worth, they're going to spend more money, they're going to stay longer. That's a key business objective. We can measure that. And we can measure that because we are the only agency that has actually built its own intelligence platform. We call it Voyage. And we're going to introduce that to you more as we go forward in the presentation. But we have the ability to be very, very flexible and very intense in the way that we measure things beyond just click-throughs to websites, social media followers, and connect that to key business objectives. And we feel like if we can demonstrate that connection between the actions we're taking on your behalf, key business objectives being accomplished, that's what you go to the public with and say, here's the things we did, and this is how we accomplished the mission statement. And we find that this works extraordinarily well because it's not destination specific, it's adaptable. Whether it's, hey, we want to work on more sustainable tourism initiatives, or it's, hey, we just want to grow, this sort of a framework will adapt to that no matter what that happens to look like. And it really does drive everything that we do.
Yeah, and as Matt was saying, that's the strategy measurement pyramid really is kind of the 30,000-foot view, but how do we get things off the ground? And this is really where the 5 C's come in. And this is, if we were lucky to become your partner, this is what we do with all of our partners. We come to town, we sit down, we could do this again on stage again if you wanted to do this exercise, but it would be a little workshop, and we literally go through the 5 C's, which is company, looking at those key business objectives, your prior market research, anything that you guys have in-house, anything that we can pull maybe from Google Analytics, website traffic, all of that good stuff, or even prior marketing performance. All of that becomes really the baseline of what we can measure towards in the future. Then community. What's the resident sentiment like? How can we increase resident sentiment in a positive direction? And then really, how does all of the values-based marketing that we're going to be doing, that's really on the tactical level. What makes sense for Eureka Springs to drive visitation here, to drive economic impact generation within the community to make sure these small businesses see the lift there. Looking at the kind of current industry trends, now you guys are one, you guys are a unique unicorn really, right? You can't compare to national trends, but what we can do is look at Northwest Arkansas and some of the clients that we have access to see where the trends lie there and see how Eureka Springs can take advantage of some things that we're seeing. Competition, always want to have an eye on your competition, and I think Matt will go through this here in a bit, but what are they out in market with? What do they look like out in market? What imagery, videos are they using? What's their unique selling point versus what is the Eureka Springs unique selling point? And what's their market share? When are they out in market? Where is there opportunity for us to steal market share away from them, when it makes sense? And then finally, the consumer. You guys have a unique visitor here, and again, we will have some data to show you later in the presentation. But what does that visitor profile look like, and what does that visitor profile shift throughout the year? Does it shift? What's the demographics? What platforms are those visitors using to get inspired and then ultimately book a trip to Eureka Springs? And then what's the perception? So those are really the 5 C's that really are foundational to what we do, and that's literally what we will come in, sit down at a table, work out these 5 C's, and that's really the basis of how we move forward. So that being said, we're about to show you 2 case studies. That's why we're here. I appreciate the flexibility in having us here. But basically taking the 5 C's, we're now going to go into 2 case studies. One's Port Aransas, one is Cheyenne. But we're going to start off with Port Aransas. I'm going to hand this back over to Matt.
Yeah, and thank you all for letting us have that little bit of time. The reason we wanted to run through that is as we go through these case studies, you're going to be hearing us talk about these things. So we want to make sure you had a good, strong working knowledge of exactly what is a key business objective and what is he talking about. So we began working with Port Aransas, Texas several years ago. Now, Port Aransas, Texas, if you're not familiar, is a small beach town on the central Texas coast. Beautiful place. Anything that you think about Texas beaches, just toss it out of your mind. This is not that. It is a really, truly beautiful place. Now, historically, Port Aransas had not spent a lot of time marketing their destination. It was just kind of a sleepy fishing town, hidden gem that a few people knew about and would go down and hang out on the beach. But 5-6 years ago, the community and their board of directors for their tourism organization decided, hey, we think we can really grow here. We've got something really great. We see all this growth in Texas, and we want our piece of that. We want our piece of that economic pie. So we began working with them as their agency of record. And the very first thing we did is that we sat down with a collection of their board, their staff, and local business owners and residents. And exactly as I said earlier, we said, what do you guys want to be? And what do you guys not want to be? And they had some very, very pointed opinions about that, as you can imagine. So after we sat down and said, okay, this is where we want to be. This is where we want to go. We began to work out in partnership with their team and with their board a plan. Now, when you're putting a plan together, the most important thing is to understand what is currently the situation. And this is where we at Madden really stand out compared to our competition. As I had mentioned, we are the only agency in the tourism space that has built its own intelligence platform called Voyage, which we use both internally as well as having 40 clients externally using it. I know transparency is important to this community. I've done a little reading. This is the ultimate in agency transparency. You're going to see everything that we see in real time. Right down to if you want to put it on your phone, you can put it on your phone or your iPad. And everything is there in real time. All the things that we're using to think about what we're doing for you all, we want you to have access to the same exact data, the same exact results. So in the case of Port Aransas, we started with using geolocation data to understand who are the current visitors, where are those folks coming from today. And it was a little bit surprising for the folks at Port Aransas because they had this idea of, going out in the parking lots and seeing which license plates are there. The problem is in Port Aransas, they're all Texas license plates, about 80-something%, about 80, what is it? I think it's 85% are all from Texas. So we wanted to break that down. We came to understand Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. These are the primary markets that they're pulling from. Now, they had identified that it was important for them that they wanted to grow in a couple of different ways. One, they had all the people on the weekends that they could handle, but they didn't have anybody in town on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So they wanted to increase that, number one. Two, they have an off season. Turns out it gets cold in Texas in January, but they still have business owners that have people to pay. And if you own a business here in Eureka Springs, I'm sure you can relate to this. But they said, look, my payroll doesn't stop in January, so we need to figure out a way to promote our destination. We think that there's plenty to do down here, even in January, even when it's a little bit chillier and you can't get in the water. So that was another thing. And then finally, taking those core markets, or some of these growth markets rather, and increasing the folks that are coming. They said, we know people from San Antonio and Austin and Houston are coming here, but we want people from Dallas, from Oklahoma City and Denver. We want those folks, because we think what we've got here is as good as South Padre. People fly to South Padre all the time. So that was the marching orders that we were given, and so we went about attacking that, looking at first, okay, here's where we are. Here's our benchmark. So as of today, about 10% when we started of folks are coming from Dallas-Fort Worth. Now, they had also identified that one of their goals was to increase the length of stay, but most importantly, one of the most vocal groups that they have are people who own short-term rentals, specifically companies that own some of those rentals. And they said, we really need to see an increase in the value of stays. So we need people renting out our condos and our homes for the week, not just the weekend. And not only that, but there were some much pricier places coming on the market. So we need to find the markets that are going to be able to afford an $8,000 beach house for the weekend, which is not necessarily just the easiest thing ever to do. So we were able to go in and say, okay, well, of all of the growth markets we might go into, we zeroed in on Dallas-Fort Worth for a couple of reasons. Again, all of this data is first party for us. We have all of this in-house. We're not having to rely on third-party partners. We can do all of this right inside, just as we do everything at Madden. And so we identified Dallas as a place where, one, they like to visit in the wintertime. We found out that they were going into birding areas. They were going golfing. When they come into peak season, they tend to book for the entire week. And when they're in town, they spend a lot of money. And then they pack up and they go home, which is exactly what the folks in Port Aransas wanted them to do. So as we go forward, understanding, okay, now we know where we're going to go fish. We were going to go to Dallas-Fort Worth. But that's not enough to say we're going to go to Dallas. Now we have to understand the cross-section of visitors that are coming in. Now this relates, I think, very well to you all here in Eureka Springs, because as a former resident of the state of Arkansas and a visitor to Eureka Springs, I don't look exactly like everybody else. I don't have a motorcycle. I'm not an artist, not a very good one. I'm a family guy, but I still love Eureka Springs, still love bringing the family here. And so you guys are blessed that you have this wide cross-section of folks that are coming in. Now, when you have a situation like that, it's great, but you also have to be very, very savvy that all of those folks are going to react differently to each other in the way that you're marketing to them. And that was what we found with Port Aransas. So the folks that are coming in midsummer look a little different than the folks that are coming in January. And so we use some first-party data that's in-house called Resonate. It's a platform called Resonate. And Resonate allows us to go beyond just demographics, male, female, educated, college educated or not, to really understanding who they are. This informs our media channel selections. It informs our creative. So it's where are these folks going to be at? And we're going to see later on some data that we've pulled specifically for you all so we can share that with you. But where are these channels that they're going to be? Where should we be focused to reach those folks? We want to be where they are, but also what types of creative is going to evoke that sort of, wow, I really want to go to Eureka Springs, or in this case, to Port Aransas. So we were able to do that. Now, the next part that Jake alluded to was our ability to see competitive information. Now, we can do that in two ways. One is that we are able to use our geolocation resources to actually see visitation to other destinations. at the behest of our partners. So if you guys identify to us who you see as competitors or destinations that you say, hey, we think that they're like us, or we want to pull some share from them, if you want to pull a few people away from Branson, we're here to help you do it. Not saying that you do, but if you did. So we have the ability to see visitation into other markets, but we also have the ability to see their paid media efforts, to a large degree, a lot of what they're doing. Again, very unique to us. So in the case of Port Aransas, they were very clear, as we were all working together around a big table, they were very clear to us. They said, Madden, we are a beach destination. There's lots of beach destinations. We don't want to look like any of the rest of them. We don't want the same white family building a sandcastle on the beach, because that's not Port Aransas. We look like a lot of different kinds of people, and you know what? They're not all on the beach building a sandcastle. Some of them are, and one of the things that's unique to Port Aransas, some of them are pulling up their pickup trucks, putting big fishing poles on the back with a cooler of beer, and that's what it looks like for them, and that's what a good time looks like to them, and we don't want to ignore them. There's some that are here for the solitude and the peace, going down island, and they want to watch birds. We don't want to ignore them. So they were very, very, very specific about that. We used our competitive intelligence resources to understand, okay, well, we know that you're competing with Destin and Panama City, Pensacola, Gulf Shores. So here's the channels that they're on. Here's how they're running on Facebook. We could see that Destin was running a lot of video ads. This was important because at the time, Port Aransas had no video assets at all. They were running no video ads. But they wanted to compete for the DFW visitor. Well, guess what the #1 beach destination is for DFW? It's Destin. So we said, if you want to compete with Destin, we're going to have to probably make video one of our key strategies in terms of media and in creative. And it wasn't just the agency dictating. This was happening in real time around a table, collaboratively talking, looking at this data together. Not just the agency looking at it and then coming to the client and saying, here's what we think you should do, but rather all of us sitting around a table looking at the same information and as a group deciding, you know what, this is what we ought to be doing together. So then we took that information. We were able to see exactly what kinds of ads and creative that these destinations were using so that we could differentiate ourselves, differentiate the product. We could see what times of year. So if you look at this looks like a mess, but this is when these destinations are running advertising, and this relates to the impression volume. Here's what we learned from this. We learned that for Destin, they're not trying to compete necessarily for business in Dallas during spring break, which is what the Port Aransas folks thought, but actually summer. So in other words, if we're going to conquest DFW away and get people to choose Port Aransas instead of Destin, we don't need to be using our limited assets to get them to choose Port Aransas for spring break. We need to be saving up everything we've got so that we can attack them right here. And so we knew to wrap all of this up before I show you the results, we knew where to go based on the assets that we have, the intelligence assets. We knew what types of folks were coming down and how to reach them and what channels they were on, and we knew what their competitors were doing too. So we put all of that together very effectively, as you might imagine, and here are some of the results. Now, this goes, and if you can, I don't know if it'll work or not, but if you want to check this out, some of the creative here is very, very cool. The Salty Stories is something that we're very proud of. It was a video series that was born of the fact that they said, hey, we want to compete with Destin. Destin's got a lot of video. We got to have video. And Salty Stories is what came out of that, and it worked really, really well. So if we talk about some of the results, as I mentioned, we are very much focused on key business objectives. It doesn't mean we're not going to talk about primary and secondary KPIs. We absolutely will. We simply believe that those things are the first line of defense of saying, here's what we're doing, here's what's working. So we're going to use primary and secondary marketing KPIs that you're probably seen and are used to say, yep, these campaigns are doing well in Dallas. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to measure things like origin market share. So we're going to be able to see in 2021 when we started that we had 10% of your total visitation coming from Dallas. By 2023, we want it to be 15 or 20%. And we know if we do that, that all the other things that we need to accomplish as a part of the mission statement will happen because those Dallas visitors stay longer, they visit in off-peak seasons, and they spend more money when they're here. And so that's part of our reporting. You can see the 282% increase in Dallas as a part of these campaign efforts I've been describing. You also see the 100% increase in RevPAR. That's because we're actually bringing in short-term rental data directly into our intelligence platform. You'll have access to that, we have access to that, and we make sure that those types of things are part of our measurement set for you, if desired. A few other things here, just to kind of give you an idea. This is an annual report that we put together for Port Aransas, so you can see the overnight percentage differences for key markets here in Dallas and in Austin, as well as growth between 2021 when we started some of these efforts and 2022. This was the big one that we really wanted to win, so we were able to see that increase. And while this is happening, we're getting feedback from those short-term rental owners and business owners and saying, yeah, we're seeing this in our cash registers. We're seeing the difference. We're seeing people here in January. We're seeing people here, our restaurant's full on a Tuesday, and it didn't used to be. And so they're saying, yeah, what you guys are doing is working. And it's because we're coming in with a very no BS approach to say, here's the actions we took, here was all the key business objectives that those actions were in service of, and because we accomplished all those key business objectives, we were able to accomplish that mission statement that we as a group set out to accomplish. Just a few more slides here. This is the short-term rental data that we bring in through a partner called Key Data. This is showing average total stay, so it's comparing the blue line post-campaign and then the dotted line before that. So you can see that growth was continuous throughout the entire year. And was a big, big win for everyone. So I'm going to pass it over now to my friend Kristen to talk about some of the work we've done in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So we're going to spend just a couple of quick minutes on Cheyenne. So we selected this case study because it was so niche and nuanced. So just again, we'll give you a little bit of a lay of the land in understanding what was important to Cheyenne at this time when we ran this campaign. So this was towards the end of 2021, and we were getting ready to start planning for 2022 initiatives. Again, 2021, particularly in the Cheyenne area and across the country, everyone was still working on rebounding coming out of the pandemic. But we are also able to leverage and utilize and benefit from a $150,000 grant that had come through ARPA funding that was intended to be used to really try to advance some of the marketing in a way that couldn't necessarily maybe be done just out of their standard budget. So we really dug back, not just over the previous year, because it was really hard to compare any kind of visitation during pandemic times. So we were able to pull visitation data for the previous 5 years, and then also looked at continued engagement across the website to really see not where their core markets were, but where were markets of opportunity and emerging markets that, again, traditionally in a standard budget may not be a priority to invest media money or media dollars into, but with extra grant money, we would be given the opportunity to do so. So with that, we selected Dallas-Fort Worth. And again, it made sense at the time because high propensity for the Dallas-Fort Worth, consumer to appreciate Western culture, Western values, and Western ideals, which aligned with Cheyenne's brand position. They also were traveling longer, coming to Cheyenne specifically, rather than just kind of driving through on their way to some of the other national parks in that area. So they were staying longer and they were spending more money. So what we did, we took that $150,000 investment and said, okay, if we can do one big splash in Dallas, then let's make sure that we're doing it in a really integrated way, and not just with a paid media campaign, but how can we help Cheyenne come to life in Dallas, and then how can we support that through PR and earned media efforts as well. So then that spring, there was a big event at Billy Bob's Honky Tonk, the world's largest honky tonk, right, Jake? Yeah, okay. So we took Visit Cheyenne on the road to Billy Bob's. They were hosting an event over a 3-day weekend called Texas Independence Day. They had, top country lineup. We took over that entire bar. I think, in person, probably had over 3,500 impressions of people who were coming through, seeing Visit Cheyenne branding everywhere. We also had a couple of brand ambassadors with us. So we had a professional rodeo cowboy, we had one of their local artists, so we were able to talk to people as they were coming in, piquing their interest about Cheyenne, and then we also had a sweepstakes component, which was important at the time to help us continue to generate that first-party data for Cheyenne then that could be used in subsequent years to be able to continue to remarket and engage with across email and other media channels. So in addition to the activation component, which we were there at Billy Bob's for 3 nights, we also then ran an integrated media campaign that was the majority of the spend, about $100,000 of that was invested in media that ran not only in Dallas, but we really opened that targeting up to anyone in Texas who had an affinity or an interest in Western culture. One of the surprising things that came out of that, and we can look at the results here, was that we got more of an uptake from Houston, even being exposed to that message, than what we had originally kind of planned for. One of the other things that I'll just quickly mention, I mentioned PR. We took with us, we had a PR plan and a component to the activation as well, where we hosted a luncheon for 15 local writers to the Dallas area. Almost all 15 of those journalists then in the next year made trips up to Cheyenne to write articles on what to do in that area and why people from Dallas would enjoy going. So it was a great win from the earned media perspective, but as we look at just campaign results in general, again, kind of blew out expectations from a media standpoint. The other thing that was important for us at that time to be able to understand was what kind of return on investment can we get out of the Dallas market. And so as part of that media strategy, we specifically selected a vendor that would help us with attribution. So when we're talking about attribution, that is consumer saw ad, consumer came to Cheyenne, stayed overnight, spent money, and we were able to track a percentage or a portion of that, their spend while they were there. So that really helped us to understand what kind of impact we were getting out of the Dallas market for every dollar that we spent. We were proud of the results that came back of 3-to-1 ROI from Dallas, but again, we're really surprised to see an unexpected surprise that we had a 4-to-1 return on investment coming out of Houston. So while those numbers were helpful, and certainly we saw an increase from Dallas that year, one of the things that we also looked at is then going forward in subsequent years when they didn't have that additional $150,000 investment, how does that return on investment look across to other markets? And I actually will tell you that as the budget started to go back down again, we ended up putting money in other markets that had a higher return on investment because that was one of the most important key business objectives to them. But we still continue to kind of reap the benefit of the Dallas and Houston market 3 years later as we've continued to see that visitation just uptick. So we can maintain that market now without having to have such a heavy investment.
Yeah, so how do we measure everything, right? So you just kind of heard Matt and Kristen talk through 2 pretty solid case studies from kind of soup to nuts, but really none of that matters if we can't measure. And if we're not transparent about what we are measuring, right? Back to stuff that maybe we have read before we came up here. But this also provides a level of accountability for us. You guys are entrusting us with large amounts of money to promote Eureka Springs, to drive visitation, to generate economic impact. How can we measure our success? And that's where kind of our Voyage intelligence platform comes in. So you've heard Matt talk a little bit about our intelligence kind of business platform on one side where we have a whole bunch of data sources in. But on the other side of the house, Voyage is also the name of just our standard marketing dashboard. All of the partners that we have within our agency have access to a 24/7 dashboard that aggregates all of the data from any marketing efforts that we're performing for the client, right? So this is where you can really go. This is our guidepost for bi-weekly conversations, monthly calls with the team, quarterly business reviews that we will be here for in person. So this is really where we can. Our media team looks at it. They're in it every day. They can optimize, make changes. But really, if you're wanting to have a lunch with a stakeholder and you're like, you know what, I wonder how that campaign is doing, you have access to this to pull this for a conversation that you might have at lunch or within the community, whether there's a monthly call, weekly call, quarterly call on the books or not. Another cool thing about kind of the data platform here is we're flexible with it, right? So we can have certain access. We can set up dashboards. There can be an executive summary dashboard that's really meant for board meetings. But we could have more in the weeds if you wanted to get really really deep in the weeds, we could have another section of the dashboard that the Eureka Springs team can actually like look at every single day. Maybe too in the weeds for residents or stakeholders, but if someone from the marketing team wants to dig deeper, we can provide access there. So again, this is our level of accountability, so you guys can hold us accountable, but this is also in return our level of transparency back to you, so that way you know exactly where your dollars are going and how things are performing. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Taylor. We've got a couple more slides to go. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. We're going to really talk about you guys here for the next probably 3 slides, and then we'll wrap it up. Happy to take questions after that. But I'll let Taylor talk about some possible key business objectives that we could put in place for Eureka Springs.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. And I think Matt's going to help me out a little bit with this. But we wanted to, talk about you guys for a second. So we just showed you what we did for Port Aransas and Cheyenne and how we really leaned on, yes, we showed you the proof of performance from clicks, impressions, return on ad spend, but we also honed it back to those key business objectives. And so we took a shot at, after, diligently looking at what you guys provided in the RFP, and it looked like you guys have already done a lot of your homework, right? You know who your audiences are, and you know some of the top states that they come from. But then we did a little bit of homework on our end too, and we identified some objectives that could be potential starting grounds for us to workshop together on a potential 3, 6, or 12-month strategy for you all, and also things that would get us to hit the ground running well. So we identified, a top 3 of growing visitation share from those high-value origin markets across need periods throughout the year. Number 2 of increasing visitation frequency and length of stay from core regional markets. So we have that balance of that off-season, those shoulder season visitors, but also overall length of stay through those midweeks and not just those event weekends that are so important to us. And then increasing the ROI for local events across core and growth markets, because we understand how important events are in this market. And Matt, do you want to dive in a little more on that?
So this is information, again, that we thought would be handy to show you all, especially in terms of, as we talk about proof of performance. We pulled, this is information on Eureka Springs that we've been able to pull internally. And you're going to see some things up here, I think, that are probably, you're sitting there going, Matt, we know a lot of people from Springfield sneak down here to hang out, and from Fayetteville and Bentonville, the whole northwest Arkansas area. But we also, as I mentioned, as we're looking at this and thinking, okay, where are people coming in? What's important to Eureka Springs? Now, we did have our ace in the hole, Kaylee, who lives here. And so, of course, we went straight to our ace in the hole and said, what do you think is important to Eureka Springs? And she, the very first thing she said is that, well, they have events constantly, and they're investing a lot of money in those events. Now, I worked with Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue many years ago. Not cheap. For Experience Fayetteville. It's a big investment. And, whether it's Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, or the Mini Cooper rally that's coming, or the Volkswagen rally I hear that's also coming, you want to make sure that it's not just something that's a big flash in the pan for the weekend. You, as a destination, we're guessing, want that to be something that's like, hey, if I'm coming down here for a zombie crawl, that's a whole week thing, because there's plenty of things to do here in Eureka Springs. So what we want to be able to help you with, or what we proactively would think about, is looking at some of this information here where you see some of these markets, and I almost hate to say Dallas yet again, but DFW, Oklahoma City, St. Louis, some places like Houston or Memphis, that these are markets where you're seeing some percentage of visitation that they're coming, and especially for markets like Houston, or the aforementioned DFW or St. Louis. These are places that you can see compared to the average other destinations that are coming in, especially if they're coming in from places like, say, Northwest Arkansas or Springfield. They're staying a full day on average longer. And that's the average, which means there's a lot of those folks, probably more than enough to fill restaurants and shops, that are coming in here on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, at least Thursday. And we would want to look at that and say, well, how do we get more of those folks to come in the wintertime, during weeks where there are not events, and when there are events, how do we get them here beginning of the week? And so if we go to the next screen here, we go into the Resonate platform again. So again, it's not just enough to say, hey, we want to get more people from Dallas and Houston to come up here and vacation for the week during the summer, or come up here for Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, or come up here during October when you guys have so much going on, so many cool things happening in this town. It's not just enough to do that. We need to understand who they are. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you guys are blessed in that you have an unusual diversity of visitation. And one of the things that was mentioned to us before is that Eureka is very unique and that everybody comes here. People who are, I think the term hippies was used, bikers, cowboys, family people, sports fans. I saw a whole table of guys from Baton Rouge that were over at the basin here that joined us for lunch at the table next to us. They look like hunters, but I'm not sure. But you guys have a real diversity. You have the artist folks that come up here. So you have this huge palette to choose from. So we want to be able to help you as your partner understand who they are, because you cannot advertise and market to all those people the exact same way. You just can't. And so we want to be able to be at a table with you, have something like this up and say, what does this look like to you all? And which of these groups feel like the best fit? Is it all of them? Do we want to split up the targeting and the budget to go after a little bit of all of these groups? Are there a few that you say, you know what, these 2 or 3 groups, Madden team, these are the folks that really come in and spend money and stay longer and so forth. So we can put that to work, and as we start talking about media strategy, as we start talking about what the creative looks like and those assets look like, this is going to be the guiding force, this type of information. And this is the core markets that we identified, and if we go to the next slide, these are some of the growth markets. Not a ton of differentiation between the two. The groups are pretty much the same. Certainly if you look at, let's just take motorcycle travelers, you can see predominantly a lot of males, still pretty good household incomes, but here's the types of channels that they often frequent. So if we're gonna go after motorcycling enthusiasts, here's where we're gonna find them. Here's the things that they're into. So this is going to help us too as we think about premium placements on websites and whatnot. And if we're talking about PR and articles and whatnot, these are the kinds of places that we're going to want to be. Here's some of their values. And then finally, some of the messaging recommendations that our intelligence would say, hey, this is the type of messaging that they're going to really react to in a positive way as we try to win them over to Eureka Springs.
I may just add to Matt real quick is oftentimes we're talking about who's your visitor of today and who's your visitor of tomorrow. And the good news is that you've got a couple of those travel intents as we look at the entertainment traveler in arts and culture that still skew a lot younger than some of those other travel intents. So, putting some kind of focused, I think, effort around continuing to engage with those audiences who are gonna maybe turn into the family traveler and then be that lifelong traveler for you. Again, it's not just planning for who's coming today, but who do we need to continue to engage to make sure they're coming tomorrow.
So thank you all very much. And in the last couple of minutes that we have here, I get the distinct pleasure of closing us out. We want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you on behalf of our team, on behalf of our entire Madden family. Thank you for this opportunity to work with you all. This is, it's always cliche to say it's a unique place we have here. This is a unique place. This is a marketer's dream. This is literally any agency's dream destination to work with. It's a dream destination because there are so many ways to work with you. And be your partner. There are so many directions we could see for growth here. So many different things to explore and do. So literally when I tell you that we are chomping at the bit, there's my horse roots coming through. I mean, we're chomping at the bit to work with you because this is a dream destination for an agency, any agency. So we appreciate that opportunity. We look forward to the Q&A and I'll turn it back over to you all. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Steve, you got any questions?
Steve Holofield, CAPC Commissioner and City Council. I asked the last group, I'm sure you know what your competitors do, and what makes you better than them? Why should we pick you over them? So.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to kick us off and take that, and then if anyone wants to add, a couple of things, and we talked about this too. So first of all, the work that you guys have been doing is good work. We have a lot of respect for Paradise too. But I will say that while we're a large agency, we have very specifically and strategically selected a team that can be here. And can be here to sit in the meetings, that knows the community, that knows the residents, that can kind of keep their pulse on what's happening. So we do feel like that's a tremendous benefit, and being able to have one of your top account people really live just 12 miles? 12 miles from here. So we consider Kaylee certainly as an asset to you all from that regard. The other thing that, a couple of other things that I think are differentiating points that I would point out is that we don't subcontract out any of our work, and I think that's something different that you would see from the other agencies that you're selecting. All of the media buying that we're doing and in-platform optimization of that is all done in-house. Our data and analytics and data analysts are all in-house. Creative is all in-house. Production is all in-house. So yes, while we can bring kind of best practices of a big agency, we want it to feel like a small personal agency where, again, you're seeing us often, but we're not subcontracting any of that work out, which I also think is a big advantage.
Something I think that also separates Madden from other agencies is that we are built on what's called an agile framework. So a quick thing about Madden, our CEO, Dan Janes, is a West Point graduate, former Army intelligence officer. So in other words, don't try to get anything by him in an interview, it won't work. But a lot of that DNA that he learned early on in his life about organization and how to run good teams has translated into Madden. So we are split into these agile teams. We have Sasquatch with us today. And then we have supporting elements that support those teams. But what that means is that our teams are going to be present, they're going to be here, but they're much more efficient in terms of how they work internally. And so that does differentiate us quite a bit. The other big differentiator is the one that we've mentioned many, many times, but it is super important. And as an agency, our ability with intelligence is really second to no one in our business. Before I joined Madden, I spent a number of years developing a lot of these platforms, both at Visit Fort Worth on the DMO side, and then being on the vendor side at companies like Arrivalist and Adara. And we have many people who have that experience, including a few of these folks that are on stage today. So we are going to be able to separate out from the other folks that we're talking about, all good agencies, but what we're able to bring to the table in terms of intelligence resources, that first party, it's going to ensure that your investment in us is going to feel like a very strong investment. And it's not going to be something where you have to take our word for it or us slap you on the back and buy you a beer and try to convince you that way. It's going to be, here is that 24/7 dashboard, here's what the information says, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to measure ourselves. We expect to be measured like any other business, not just an agency, but we want to be, our success or failure, we feel like needs to be tied very, very closely to how you all, as a destination, and those of you who are business owners, and even the folks that are not in the room that are business owners, how they're measuring success, which is why we talk about key business outcomes so much.
So at the beginning of the year, we got to go to the governor's conference on tourism, which was great. I learned a lot. And I went to a breakout session on diversity. But the one group they didn't even talk about was the LGBTQ tourists. I was shocked. Here we are, but we're a small town in Arkansas. If nobody else wants to attract that money, we do. Do you work with those kinds of specific groups and advertising?
I do. I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, yes. So our investment in just DEI initiatives across the board, and actually Matt has got a good example about this too, just the kind of the business case. But yes, we've done a number of Pride-specific campaigns. We've actually even internally created what we refer to as an employee resource group that is set up that is focusing specifically on DEI topics in the industry and how we can continue to support clients whose audience and consumer is representative of that community. And so we're working really, really hard to, not only be looking at inclusion from content and talent and messaging, but even at the destination level. And I think this speaks a little bit to and a benefit that we can bring on not only the marketing side, but as we look at destination management, understanding some of those tools that we can even start to train local businesses or local store owners about how to, make sure that they are represented or they're participating in the campaigns, or if we're promising something in a campaign that, when people arrive, they feel safe, they feel welcome, that message from a campaign perspective is translating down to the experience that they have here in the destination too. So yeah, certainly we're doing a lot of stuff in the Pride space, and happy to follow up with some examples of that too, if that's helpful. But.
Absolutely. And again, connecting that to measurable outcomes as well. So in the case of Port Aransas, it wasn't an LGBTQ plus opportunity that was brought up, but it was a diversity topic that was brought up in that, again, all of their competitors, it was the same white family building a sandcastle on the beach. That doesn't look like Port Aransas. It's a much more diversified destination, and nobody was talking to the Hispanic audience. Well, the Hispanic audience in Texas is growing by leaps and bounds, and these are very prosperous people. They're very hardworking, they're making good money, and they want to go to vacation, and nobody was talking to them. So it wasn't just a feel-good decision to go after them, and I love the way you put it. Hey, if nobody else wants them, we would love to have their money, and who wouldn't? That's how Port Aransas felt about the Hispanic market. Nobody's talking to them. Well, we know a bunch of them are already enjoying our destination. We'd love to have more that want to come here and spend their money. And so we were able to use our resources to make that a business case, so that as we're communicating that effort to the board, to stakeholders, to residents, that they understood that this is not only the right thing to do, this is the correct business decision to make.
Hi, David Evans, CAPC Commission and City Council member. I was going to ask essentially the same question that Steve asked, because in your comparison with Port Aransas and Cheyenne, and then you flipped over to your research on Eureka Springs, there was no mention of LGBTQ+, which we get a lot of travelers, destination travelers from that market, as well as religious, and you name it, we get it. I saw a lot about the motorcyclists, and I think I saw something about home canning and recipe classes, which that I've never heard of. But that is something that would definitely have to be addressed with an open mind. I appreciate the fact that you have a DE&I program in place, as well as employee resource groups. But that's something that we need to see on the flip side of that as well. And one other question that I have is that in your packet that you sent to us with the various fees and whatnot, I didn't see anything related to website development or maintenance. Can you explain why and if that has any additional costs?
Yeah, happy to take that question too. So, as we look at budget, well, first of all, some of the feedback, or as we get closer to even putting out things regarding pricing, is that we need to hear your guys' feedback and where your priorities were. So if that was listed as a specific area or scope of work that should have been included and it wasn't, then that was just a miss on our part. But that would certainly be something that as we sit down together, through the next round of conversations, is to say, what are your top priorities, and how do we look at, if we need to a phased approach to this. So what are the most important things that we need to accomplish in year one, and then how do we continue to expand that investment in year two? And it may be that we can start to prioritize those things out across either the year or subsequent years, as well as we're looking at kind of this long-term relationship. I will say that one thing that I wanted to make sure to mention on the pricing stuff too is that we are unique in the sense that we as an agency don't track hours, which is almost unheard of. So anytime we come to you, we'll be very transparent up front about here are our management fees for account and for media management. Everything else is going to be pass-through costs, and it's not going to change. So it's more fixed costs, fixed price. structure so that there aren't ever any surprises of, oh, we ran out of hours this month and now we're going to have to either charge more or we just have to stop this work. So we will strive and do strive to make sure that we're totally transparent. But as far as scope of work, that can always be continue to be negotiated if that's a priority.
I just want to mention something too, to your first comment. I know we showed a bunch of data. We showed the Resonate. That was a glaring miss on the Resonate data. But again, this shouldn't be taken as a gospel. This should be more of a, here's what we have to get us a head start. When we come here, we sit down with you guys and we workshop, looking through the 5 C's and what we mentioned earlier today. That will obviously bubble up, and that will then become a priority, right? So just because you didn't see it here doesn't mean that was not thought about on our side. That we were just showing the data that we had access to. So I just wanted to mention.
So to piggyback on their question, what I saw was 2 core audience categories, and a piece of those said tolerance. Both of them said tolerance. So I assume that was speaking to what, was that what?
Yes, and what we also find in a lot of destinations that we work with, and we work with destinations from one end of the continent to the other, is that a lot of times when marketing to the LGBTQ plus community, a lot of times they don't necessarily, it's not always automatic that they want to be called out specifically, but it's more subtle. So it's in the creative, it's in who's on the beach together, and not necessarily setting them aside, but making them inclusive and just a natural part of the work. And so to some degree, some of those categories are going to be inclusive of that community, as a part of the work. And then as we sit, and I think I think we've tried to really explain as best that we can, as we have those conversations with you all, we're going to learn a lot more about the tone and tenor of the destination, the work that's come before, the direction that you want us to go. Because at the end of the day, we work at your behest. And so, I apologize you don't see everything you wanted to see today, but I hope you see the beginnings and the seeds of how we want to work with you all.
So I've got a little different question. I mean, we're interviewing you, and one of my favorite interview questions I ask people when I interview them is, why would I want to work for you?
I love that. Do you want to take it first, or you want me to go? She's like, no, you take that one. Something about Madden that I've enjoyed personally working here is that we're unlike, and before I worked at this is my first agency to work at. Before that, I was on a vendor partner side with many agencies, working with many agencies. Before that, I was on the client side, both at Oaklawn Park, and then in Experience Fayetteville, and then at Fort Worth. And working with all of those folks, the thing that we pride ourselves is that we're very easy folks to get along with. We're very dedicated. We have a lot of brilliant people who love, this is our passion, this is our life's work, this is all I'm ever going to do. However, we are very collaborative, and we pride ourselves on that. There's not going to be any of us dictating to you, this is what you need to do. You're wrong. No, you don't know. Hey, you don't see what's going on over here. That's not our style. That's not who we are. So in terms of why you would want to work for us, I think the way you put it, it's because, I think you want to work for us because of our style and how we operate and the way that we carry ourselves. There is no ego here. There's no arrogance. It's not who we hire. We're very specific about the folks that we hire and the types of folks that we hire. One of the reasons that over 20% of our company comes from DMO is because what we have found over time is that people who have worked in DMOs tend to be some of the most humble but also brilliant, hardworking people on the planet. And so we're a whole company full of that sort of thing. And I think that's why anybody would want to work with us, for us, etc.
So we all like to win. The economy was roaring. Now we're seeing a lot of recessionary data, and inevitably there's going to be a bad month or months. And so how does it sound like coming from you guys when we don't win? Transparent.
It's going to be right there in the data. And we actually had that happen to us in Port Aransas. Not long after one of our first campaigns, some of the data that came out said, well, wait a minute, ADR is going down. You guys are doing all these campaigns, but our ADRs are going down. Well, you could stop there and say, oh gosh, we failed. But again, we have all of these resources. And so what we were able to do is to dive into it a little more and understand, why are the ADRs going down? Well, the ADRs were going down because supply on the market was absolutely going bonkers. People were just dumping properties onto the market to get into the game. And so what you were having happen is you were seeing a huge spike in supply, and you were seeing occupancy going up, people were booking, but those new entrants into the market were competing. They were driving the ADRs down because they were new into the market and they wanted to get their properties full. So we saw occupancy going up, supply going up, which artificially depressed ADR. Now, is that trying to get out of it? No, but it is saying, here's a fact-based reason why we think that's happening. Now, it's not always going to be that simple. Sometimes things don't work. And if it doesn't work, again, we think about those marketing KPIs as the early warning system. We hope we catch it then before we get into the key business outcome level. In other words, if we have campaigns that are not working in Dallas, then logic suggests we're not going to see origin market share in Dallas go up. So we think about it as an early warning system. You might want to add on to this, Kristen.
I was just going to add that I think, the team size and the way that we're structured from an agile perspective too is to help mitigate that from happening. I mean, yeah, of course, there's going to be times where either maybe a campaign isn't performing how we wanted to, or there are all these external factors in the market. So, these monthly conversations, when we're doing monthly reporting, if our team is starting to see some of those indicators, we can hop on a quick call immediately and say, hey, we're looking ahead and our hoteliers are telling us that we're going to be soft in a month. How can we then quickly divert some of those media dollars immediately to the team that can turn that on and off within a matter of minutes? And we did that a lot. We learned that ability through COVID. And swapping in and out creative constantly, and changing media tactics constantly, and adjusting budgets constantly. That's probably one of the biggest advantages of having, on a size of an account the size of Eureka, you'd probably have 4 media specialists working just directly on those media buys that we're in platform managing on a daily basis, rather than just sending them out to a programmatic vendor and then coming back at the end of the campaign and being like, oops, didn't quite perform. So.
How are we on time? Are we okay? So we have a lot of questions, so we
Yep,
may have to.
all good.
We may have to go quicker. I'm not sure how we are on time. What are your expectations regarding the size of supporting staff at the CAPC? Are there normally key staff positions that you rely on, and what are those positions?
We work with a wide range of clients and client structures. So everything from, our team may be joining a team of 20 other individuals, and in many cases, or in a lot of cases, we may be working with one. So it really just depends on the individual circumstances of each client. And I think, again, that's probably where we would say, we've had a number of instances where, we're stepping in and even helping to advise on organizational structure, or lobbying events, or advocacy campaigns, or helping to do board presentations. So we certainly have that ability to kind of step in and play, honestly, whatever role you need us to, but then also lean on the staff and staff resources and capabilities that are available to just make sure that nobody's duplicating efforts either. So we want to use each resource to its fullest potential.
Okay, thank you. How do you track conversions for a destination? How important are landing pages to tracking campaigns?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of that question?
Sure. How do you track conversions for a destination, and how important are landing pages to track campaigns?
I'll let some of these folks that deal in some of more of the actual website conversion type metrics, but I think I would refer back to the way that we think about it is, again, when we sit down for the first time and we start working together, we're going to craft a mission statement in terms of, here's what you all, as the representatives of this destination, want it to be. What is the residents, what do the business owners want it to be? And that's not going to be just like, you guys think in your mind of a mission statement, it's like a pie in the sky. There's nothing quantitative. This is going to be a quantitative statement. And sometimes that's an increase in length of stay. And in the case of Port Aransas, it was decreasing trash on the beach. Sometimes it's very different. It's not always a marketing goal. It's not always something that comes off as a marketing goal. So we want to start with that. And then as we talk about tracking conversions, it goes back to the key business objectives, which is that middle layer, the connective tissue between that mission statement and the things that we're going to do specifically, which I'll let some of our other team members talk about. But we feel, from a philosophical standpoint, if we're doing a good job on the marketing piece, on the work that you are hiring us to do, if we are getting conversions to the website, if our ads are sending traffic to the right parts of the website, if we're seeing an increase in engagement on social media channels, if those things are happening in specific markets, and then we use our other resources to see that over time, while these successful efforts are happening, that we're seeing more people from Dallas show up as a part of the whole pie. And when that happens, all these other dominoes start to fall. So we're tracking conversions from an idea of business outcomes, really a collection of business outcomes, that when you put all of it together and you explain this and say, here's what we did in Dallas and in Houston and Oklahoma City, Kansas City, wherever those markets are that we end up deciding to work together in. Here's what we did well, here's what happened after those campaigns, and ultimately, because all of these efforts were successful, we achieved that mission statement. So,
Just real fast, I know we're running up on time here, but on the landing page specifically, I mean, our goal is always to drive traffic to a customized landing page that looks and feels like the ad the consumer saw. We don't want to toss them to the home page and let them basically fend for themselves. They've got to land on something that looks like what they were interested in and what made them click in the first place. So I think building that out, whether that is us, we're very capable of building out landing pages, working with the team to build out landing pages, also looking at SEO on the other side. What are the keywords that are being searched to make sure that those are a part of the landing page? So yes, I mean, absolutely, we take landing page conversions seriously, but that then hopefully funnels up to more key business objective outcomes. So I just wanted to hit that.
Okay, so I don't believe the website development was included in the RFP process.
Which is probably why you didn't see that.
Some people may not know that, but this is audience questions. And so how long is your launch process? What level of Voyage and Resonate do you include in your proposal?
So typically when we are onboarding a client, as we look at, I mean, we would try to turn around and be out here as quickly as we can. Again, to have the team and bringing alongside us folks from our creative team and content as well. So usually that's within a couple of weeks of signing a contract. I mean, and then honestly, that's one of the very first parts of onboarding is sitting down to have that KBO conversation so that we all have a very, very clear understanding of how collectively we're going to measure success over the year. Then we can start to, typically we quickly review all, previous media plans and what the outcomes of that were, quickly get an idea from a creative audit of what creative assets we have to work with. And some of those like fundamental media tactics, whether it's SEM or particularly SEM, that can be, spun up essentially in a matter of days. So just depending on, it's pretty easy for us to come in on board and make sure that you're not having a lapse of any kind of marketing effort or strategy out there. So it's easy for us to hit the ground running, and we're ready to go as soon as you all are.
Okay, I think you just answered.
Also, the Resonate data is added value. So yeah, I just want to mention that. I mean, all of the stuff that we were kind of showing from a Resonate standpoint, that's just what we have in our back pocket to provide to partners. So that is at no cost.
So there's no extra cost?
There's no extra cost.
No extra cost.
Okay.
And it's worth saying, we understand too that you guys have invested in some third-party platforms like Zartico. We are able to help you enhance that investment. And one of the things that we find a lot of times that DMOs will struggle with is that they will see a platform, an amazing platform, but then once they start using it, they find like, oh, it's really hard to get the value out of it. It's valuable, but it's hard to find the time in the day. And that's where our team, the fact that we're the only agency that built a platform like that, we can also use that platform really, really well on your behalf. And so you can think of it as a cost saving in that if you hired someone on your team to be a data analyst, that's about an $80,000 to $90,000 investment in personnel. We're going to be able to give you that as a part of the proposal. So there's a major cost savings in that and an enhancement in the investment that you've already made.
So I think in a way you've addressed this one somewhat, but it's about resident sentiment. And so some of the sentiment is residents understand the need for, different core markets like Dallas, but some want more marketing from like fellow art communities, like a Taos, Santa Fe. Some of those things want more progressive, well-traveled travelers. I think maybe you spoke a little bit to some of that, but that's kind of the question.
I'm sorry? Yeah, I think, one of the first things that I would say is that for the longest time, particularly in the DMO space, we did a terrible job of understanding the importance of resident voice. And so, and this was like a number of years ago, but I feel like, we would always talk about, well, this is a lodging tax that residents don't pay, and so we're gonna spend all of our marketing effort outside of the market because residents aren't our target audience. And so, we really don't necessarily have to be concerned about, sharing what we're doing with our residents. And I think, we've learned the hard way through the years that can't be the approach at all. Understanding your residents and their voice and what they want, how ways in which they can get involved in the campaigns, ways that they understand the benefit of a tourism economy, to just the sustainability of your economies is really important. And so now we almost reverse that, starting with really understanding what that resident sentiment is and talking about ways that in a meaningful way, residents are being heard, they can contribute, they've got a voice in that, and are just really aware of what we're doing and what those efforts are, because you guys know your community, but that's a role that will never be replaced by any of us up here on stage. So we take that work really seriously and have a number of examples where we've done almost resident-only campaigns to help, and advocacy campaigns to help residents understand what we're up to, how to get engaged, and why this work matters.
Okay, there was one more question, but I don't understand it, and we're out of time.
Okay.
So I apologize to that person. But thank you very much.
Absolutely. If you want to send that afterwards, if you talk to them, we're happy to answer that via email, and you can, yeah, for sure. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.